Hi there, and welcome to The Art to Key Art, how great key art can lead to doubling marketing numbers. I'm Alex Van Lepp, and I am here to guide you through this presentation. I have been in the industry for over 10 years, and specifically for the last 8 years, I've been involved with indie game marketing. Currently, I'm the marketing director at video game publisher Graffiti Games, and I'm also a partner at marketing agency Vim Global. So this talk is going to share the effectiveness of good key art and why your studio should invest in money and resources to ensure that your banners are attracting and converting people into visits, wish lists, and ultimately sales. I'll share examples of key art that Graffiti Games produced from the past year, what we did, the numbers and results that we got, and then also, particularly with Steam, how to make sure you're doing what you can do to have a banner that really converts people into wish lists and sales. Everything draws from my experience and then also from the data insights that I've found from the past couple of years when I had an idea to start tracking key art effectiveness. So what is key art? I'm sure most of you already know what key art is, but for those that don't, it's a virtual representation of your game. Think of it as a billboard for your game. Often it is used for store pages, so your Steam capsule banners, for your thumbnails for trailers, for media in a press kit, for your social media channels. It's used in many different ways. But I think the most significant is for store pages because that's oftentimes the first way someone sees your game. And I do feel that key art is probably the most significant marketing tool that you have because it's often the first line where someone sees your game in order to get attention from consumers, media, streamers, first parties, publishers, whoever you're trying to get your game out in front of. Particularly with stores, there are tons of games launching every day, thousands every year. You want to be able to stand out in the store because maybe that's the only chance someone ever sees your game is through the key art. And if you're not standing out, you're just going to get passed by. Now, I want to go over some key art basics and to start with a good piece of key art, which is this Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion art. As you can tell, it's high quality. It's easy to read the logo. It explains the game some. It's not exactly, oh, this is him committing tax evasion, but it's a little tongue-in-cheek. You'd see the different characters. You see Turnip Boy, the titular character in the middle there with money around him. And I particularly like that the focus of all the other characters and that your eye is drawn to the center where the character and the logo are. That way someone right away sees what the game is instead of having to search for a piece of logo that they can know what the game is. For this instance, the colors are really nice and bright too. It doesn't always have to be that way, but I do like it for here. Now, the main reason, as I've already kind of touched on, is to invest in your key art is just to stand out among the crowd. The visibility in the store is huge because well-crafted key art will lead to a successful game launch. Since 2019, we've seen anytime that we invested in key art at Graffiti Games that it resulted in doubling our marketing numbers. And we didn't have an artist on staff, so we always outsourced that. So it was really good to invest in that money and that time that it does take to create a key art. Ultimately, you're going to increase your store visibility by converting people who see it in the store into visitors. So for instance, in this image here, I took this from a Steam festival. You can see the key art is what you see first in a store. I like the Growbot in the middle. I like the colors. I like how clear it is and easy it is to read. And the character is cute. So it makes me want to know more about this game. And this ultimately will lead to me clicking on it. When you're in a store and you see this, people are just going off of what they see first. And so you got to be cognizant of that. This is important because in the back end with Steam, you'll have impression numbers. And that's anytime someone sees your key art. So whether it's in a festival like this or it's on more like this in another game's page, whether someone's on your page, or even in upcoming titles or searching there. That all counts as impressions, which is great, but it doesn't lead to the ultimate goal of getting wish lists and sales. So you really want to convert people, and a good key art will make people want to click and go to your page. And then ultimately, if they're invested in that and you have a great page, you can then convert people into wish lists and sales. So key art serves as that catalyst to get people to your page and to convert them into wish lists and sales. And you're not just going to be using it in the store page, as I mentioned. You'll use it as a trailer thumbnail, on Twitter, other social media channels, Reddit. And so you want to have that great key art that then will push people to your page in other areas too. And here it is in the wild. So in this Blue Fire example, top left, you see it as a trailer thumbnail. And that's even to get people to view your trailer, because oftentimes people just see that first thumbnail and that makes them decide whether or not they want to click on the game. On the bottom left, you have Twitter background banner, again, to create that community. And on the right is a Steam small capsule, which is really important. And I'll touch base more on it later, because with the small capsule, it's read at such a small size, you really want to make sure your art is high quality, legible, and clear, and can present the game. It's a bit tougher because it's smaller to show a good representation, but it's really, really important that you work on it and you have a good piece of art, and we'll touch on it more. And it isn't just launch where you need to work on your key art. I recommend after launch, updating it to let people know about sales, promotions, DLC, events. Let's say you're leaving early access, you're at 1.0, you're going to 1.2 or whatever you want to call it. It's really important to let people know that, hey, there's something different with the game. In this Blue Fire example here, on the right side, we were featured as a Steam Daily Deal. And so we knew we were going to be on the front page, and we wanted to convert our wish list, but also attract new customers. So what we did is we added a little banner at the bottom to call out the 35% off 48 hours in order to catch people's eyes. Did a different color, same kind of font, but that different color pops up. Really, really nice against it. And in the Steam backend, it's great in the graphical assets section. You can actually do an asset override. So instead of having to replace every piece of key art, you do an override where you upload your new key art, you set the schedule. For instance, this was 48 hours, so we had it set for 48 hours. And then once the sale's over or whatever promotion is over, then it automatically reverts back to the original key art. So it's not having to replace it and then replace it again. It just automatically does it. And if you want to keep at it, you can do as many overrides as possible. As far as I've seen, I have not done more than a handful, but it is a really good tool that will help save you time. Now, I'm going to go into some do's and don'ts before we even go into our results, because I think it's really important to understand what makes great key art, what doesn't make good key art, and what you can do to make sure you're producing really high quality art. So as I've been mentioning, you want to find a focal point, ideally around the center with a logo, with the main character. For instance, in this Blue Fire example, the logo and the character Umbra, they are together and your eye's kind of drawn there through the action of the rest of the characters, but also that he's front and center. I recommend investing in your key art, whether you're hiring an artist to produce it for you, or you're just doing the research. Research other key art that you like, other banners that you think are good, and that's going to help you form a direction you want to go. And it doesn't have to be from video games either. You could take it from movies. You can take it from any artwork that you think is really cool and would fit within your game. For Blue Fire, we actually were inspired by Star Wars posters as a way to create this poster. And ultimately, we came upon this theme. And then that research will help you with an artist too, because if you hire someone, it helps give them direction. It helps do mock-ups, and it'll make the process go a lot more smoother and a lot faster. I know people don't always have artists on staff, and so they have to hire an artist such as us. But it's really important that you do and that you don't skimp out, because like I said, it's really important to have good key art that will attract people's attention, and it will pay you back. Like I said, with us, we saw our numbers double time and time again whenever we invested in good key art. And as I showed you on the last slide, update your key art. In this instance, we started giving out a free soundtrack to coincide with a sale. And so we brought that into the banner. It's just always good to keep the community knowing anytime you have DLC or any other update. And then lastly, think about banner sizes, because you're going to have to create quite a bit of them. And I'll touch on that in the next couple slides. And then for the small capsule, I always recommend creating original art, because it's not really good to take your main key art and scale it down. And again, I'm going to touch on that a little bit more in the upcoming slides. So when you're looking to create a key art, think about the horizontal and vertical dimensions. When we were updating the key art for Graffiti's upcoming game, Nira, we made this graph here to show, okay, this is what would be in the vertical and this is what would be in the horizontal images. This gives you an idea, because, okay, I know I can move elements around. With the store pages, some of them might actually have you do both vertical and horizontal dimensions. Do you want to be able to move elements easily? One, it helps save your time. And two, then with your artist, it helps keep the theme overall. So here you can see we did a horizontal position, and we have open space on for the vertical position. All we have to do is just move around some elements, such as the llama on the right, the totem on the left, and it can all fit in within that vertical, because we kept that center the same. And that's what you want to do. You want to keep that center essentially the same and just be able to move around items, because again, not just with store pages, your key art's going to live in other areas. For instance, on Twitch, it's always great to have an image there. That's a vertical image. So if you only create a horizontal image, it's not going to work. You're going to have to try to crop it, and it may not work out very well. Here's what it looked like. The image looked like in the actual Steam page. So this is the horizontal image there. Move the totem a little bit there to work within the sizing on Steam, but overall really good. And then here's what it looked like with the small capsule. Again, another horizontal, but still had to move some elements around. And then for Twitch, it was a vertical position. And you can see that the elements are basically the same, just some items moved. We even took the llama out of the vertical just because it didn't fit within it, but it doesn't take away from the game. Now some don'ts. So Graffiti has not always been the best at creating key art. Whenever someone's starting out, you're not going to be masters at it, and it takes time. And especially, you got to find the right artist to produce great key art. So big thing, don't have illegible text, and characters and graphical elements. Too small, blurry, especially with the small capsule, it's going to make your life horrible, because people aren't going to click on it or see it. Don't use low res. Always make sure your art is high res. Don't have too many visual elements. It's just hard to decipher. I like to keep small capsule elements between 2 and 3 for that reason. And I like to be more on the minimal side, as long as it tells a story. When you start adding too many elements, people's eyes start to wander. You never have a physical, focal point that people will see. And then don't limit your logo to one place. That's a really, really big one, because when you're resizing for the different stores, as I mentioned, you're going to have vertical, you're going to have horizontal. It's going to make your life a hell, because you are going to then have to move every single graphical element in order to make sure that the banners look well. And don't do that to yourself. Make it easy. You don't have time for it, especially if you want to update your key art for sales or promotions after launch. You just want to make your life easy. And like I said, it's just a mess. This example here, Bite the Bullet, this was one of our games, and its piece of art was not good when we first created it. One, the logo text is really difficult to read. I can't tell you how many times someone said, I bite the bullet seeing this, because they thought it was the game's name, even though it's Bite the Bullet. The logo is stuck in the one spot because you have so many graphical elements around it. If you move it just a little bit up, a little bit left, a little bit down, you're going to be blocking one of the characters. And then there's just too many characters in it. So your eye just kind of wanders all over. It's not really good. Luckily, we did create some new art for launch that helped out. Now, I keep talking about small capsules, and it's because it's something I think is really important, and I feel that people often don't think about, and Graffiti didn't think about so much in the past either. These are 4 great examples of key art that we've done, and I'll dive a little bit more into why it's great to have good small capsule key art, which of all your key art, I think is the most important because it's often what people will see in a store. So I keep talking about creating original key art for the small capsule, and that's because it's really hard to take a 16:9 key art and reduce it to a small capsule. A lot of times people do this, but it doesn't work out because that key art is meant to be seen at a larger size. When you shrink it, the text becomes illegible. You can't really see the elements. And so people just kind of see colors when they're going through. Don't use only text for a small capsule because you're trying to give an impression of what your game is. So when it's only text, no one has any idea what your game is. Unless you're some huge title and you can just say your name and people know what you are. But chances are that's not your game. That's not our games. So you need to give a little bit of elements. So again, clear and readable, legible. That's what the main key art, small capsules too. And then, as I mentioned before, limit the graphical elements. I like to keep it to around 2 or 3 with a logo. There's no real set rule. It's just my personal preference and what I think has worked out well for us. And I think it would work out well with you too. And you can take elements from your main key art in order to make a small capsule. I'll show you how to do that. So here we took an existing Turnip Boy commits tax evasion vertical key art. We actually made a vertical and horizontal, so we had 2 original ones. Not everyone's going to have that luxury, but we did. And I noticed that when looking at this, there was an empty space next to Turnip Boy because we were trying to come up with a new small capsule. So I thought, hey, if we take that, put the logo next to it, because Turnip Boy running with some money, and you see the logo, nice and easy, him committing tax evasion, that tells you a story. He's running away. It's clear. It's readable. And then when we made this, we saw a really good click-through increase. So that's one way you can make a small capsule from your existing art. Another way is just to move around elements as needed in order to fit for a good small capsule. And then here's kind of what our small capsule, the evolution of it was. So on the top left, you had our original one, which had a great cast of characters there. But when you see it in a small version in the Steam page, it's really hard to read the logo. And some of the characters you're not seeing as well. So because of that, then on the upper right, we just did the logo with the character, but it doesn't really tell a story. Sure, the name alone tells you a lot about what the game is, but you still need a little bit more. And then on the bottom, as I showed you, that's what we ultimately came up with. And I really like it. I think it's a good representation. And as I said, it really did a great job of increasing our click-throughs on Steam. And I really believe because the game performed really well at launch, being a top 10 Steam game for about 2.5 weeks, part of that is because people saw that small capsule on the Steam homepage in the new and trending section and just kept clicking on it because they kept thinking, oh, I really like this art. This is cool. It's already a trending game. And so it can help continue that momentum from launch and keep you going and going. We didn't anticipate to be in that section for 2.5 weeks, but I do think the key art was a good source of that. Now, I know, as I said, not everyone's going to have an artist on staff. And so when you are outsourcing your key art, here's some guidelines or some tips to help you. So first, determine your budget. Again, don't skimp. It's not going to do good. You're not going to get a good result. You will want to invest your money into producing key art. And so with that, once you know your budget, you know who you can afford. And then who do you find? Well, ask your network. That's what we did. When we found our artists, we just asked developers we knew. We asked other publishers. We asked friends, partners. And they gave us options. And then from there, we went with the people who we thought were really good and matched our aesthetic for our games. Obviously, you can find someone who's a great artist and they do great key art. But if it doesn't match what your game is and feel, maybe it's not the best fit. You can also search sites such as ArtStation. That's where we browsed our artist portfolios beforehand to see if it would be a good fit. And then you can check social media. There are people there too. And as I mentioned, you want to start early because one, it takes a while to find an artist because you don't know people's availability, when they might have other jobs coming up. So, you might be able to start it and then have to pause and then start again. And it just takes time. With Blue Fire, I showed you, it took us 2 months to revise that key art because people's availabilities, feedback, it just takes time to do it. And if you do it right, you're going to spend quite a bit of time. And then have a direction and an idea. I talked about that before, but it'll help the artist then come up with a couple of mock-ups. And then from there, you can give them feedback and start getting in the right direction of what you want your key art to be. But examples really help. And then an idea of like, okay, what kind of story do I want to tell? What do I want to convey when people see this? And then down the line, when you finalize your key art, make sure that you get the needed file sizes from them. You can't get every single one because it's difficult. You never know what certain stores might want down the line. But for Steam, you have those guidelines. You can see what you'll need. But that's why you want to also obtain the source file, because by doing that, you can make any updates later on. Alterations, resizing for different stores, editing for marketing purposes. I told you about the post-launch. And also, if you just want to tinker around with it a little bit, do trial and error and see what works and what's getting people to click and go to your page, that source file is going to be helpful because you don't know what someone's availability is to do it again, work on it again later. And it just saves you time and energy. So here I'm going to dive into our first case study, which is Blue Fire. It launched this year in January, and it was a top 10 Steam and eShop game. And I really feel that the key art played a big factor in this. And it just is really awesome key art. And I think based off of the numbers, you'll see where it came from and what it ended up being. Really, the key art played a role. So just to give some background about the game, it initially was announced as a Nintendo Indie World title. It was actually the first game shown during the event in March of 2020. So we started out with some great media and consumer buzz, but unfortunately, part of that event, we couldn't actually launch the Steam version. It was Nintendo only. And so we had all this awesome coverage and consumer attention, but no real place to send people, nowhere to besides Discord and Twitter. And that only increased so much. Ultimately, a few months later, we were part of IGN's Summer of Gaming event. And that's where we launched the Steam page. And so we actually started off with a really good number to start our campaign. But ultimately, the numbers decreased. They slowed down and went pretty stagnant. And I think part of that was because of the key art. When we were pushing organically on social media, on Reddit, it just wasn't getting people there, and people weren't clicking on it in the store itself. And so because of this, I was like, we need to update our key art, because a game with this much media and consumer attention should not be having this much of an issue getting people to wish lists and even just getting visitors to the page. So with the art, On the top left, you can see what the old main key art used to be. And it's okay. It's not amazing. The problem is that it's just not very clear, readable. It doesn't really present what the game is about. The characters seem blurry. Part of that is our problem because we want it to be mysterious, but by doing so, you don't actually know what's going on. Everything's kind of in silhouette, and it just doesn't really tell you, hey, this is Blue Fire. This is what the game is about. You're fighting these monsters, these characters. So, ultimately, it needed changing. And then the red for a game called Blue Fire, that kind of confused some people too. And that's why on the bottom left, we created this new key art, which is a great depiction of Blue Fire. You can see the main character there, Umbra. He's got his swords out in an action pose. There's lots of action going on from the other enemies, from the characters, or just even reading a book there. He's in an action pose. Everything gets pushed to the center where Umbra is and the logo is, so people know right away what the game is. And we did keep one character in the middle top a bit blurry and mysterious because that's the main boss. So we wanted to keep some sort of elements of mystery still in it, and which you can do as long as you make everything else clear and easily defined. Once we did that, man, our numbers increased a ton. And I'll go into those results in the next couple of pages. On the right side, you can see the before and after of the small capsule. Now, that first one on the top there, just the logo with a blurry background, that, as I said, text only does not work. Personally, I wouldn't click on this because it doesn't tell me anything about the game. And it's just not clear either. Even just with the logo, it's still kind of blurry, and I would just skip over it. And so we came up with the one on the bottom right as our small capsule. We took the Umbra pose, so because you have that action, and then we made it more readable, more legible. We moved the logo a bit, so we cut it into two instead of it being just straight one. And that fits where you can then add one graphical element with the Umbra there, and then have the Blue Fire logo. And then you can see there's a bit of a background too. And all that really works well, especially when you're seeing it at a smaller size, because in a store page, this would probably be half the size, a third of the size. So you really want to make sure things are clear and legible. Now, I want to go into some numbers, and then this is comparing a random week before and after we did the key art change. So the chart on the left, that's before the key art change, and the chart on the right is after the key art change. And I chose 2 weeks that didn't have any marketing beats, that didn't have anything else going on. There were no other changes, because I wanted to compare when it's organic searches, so people, what they see through Steam and social media, Reddit, those areas, and the numbers from it. So you can see on the left, we had a pretty good click-through rate from our impressions, but it wasn't really translating into wishlists per day. So we were getting 9 per day, which for a game that had a lot of consumer buzz and media attention, it didn't really make sense. And so I think people just weren't clicking on it. Even if they were seeing it in the store, they weren't clicking on it, or they just were seeing the then main key art after clicking on a capsule key art and then just being like, yeah, this game's not for me. On the right, you can see the impressions are virtually the same, but our click-through rate doubles, and we had an awesome 60%. And our wishlist per day increased to 25, so almost 3 times as many afterwards. Our visitors more than doubled too, and that's, to me, showing people were seeing this image, this key art, and they were clicking on it at a higher rate, especially in the store, to see what Blue Fire was like. And then ultimately they were converting into visitors and wish lists, and at launch then into sales. So it's really important to have that good key art, because as you can see here, we're doubling our numbers, and that's what you want. You want those numbers, especially your wish list numbers, to increase. And here's a chart that shows our visitors from when we launched the Steam page until the end of November. As you can see in the very beginning, that's when we had the IGN event, and we started off pretty good, but then things stagnate for a bit, except for a couple little marketing beats here and there. But then we changed the art right around early October, just prior to the Steam Autumn Festival and the Mixed October event. And you can see our visitor numbers just increased a ton. And then also the fact that we had way more visits during those marketing beats and afterwards than we had previously had with any of our marketing beats. Even our beat around November 11th, that had basically the same amount of visitors as our IGN event. And that was featured on IGN's homepage and their YouTube. Whereas this marketing beat around November 11th was a lot minor, but had much more impact because of our key art. And even our average days where we had nothing going on was still double and higher than the regular days from before. So you can definitely see that big boost. And then these numbers actually then going into launch increase immensely. But I just wanted to take that time frame from when we had the original key art and then when we updated the key art. And again, I truly believe that revising our key art played a big role in getting these numbers higher. So here are some of our results. Overall, we doubled our Steam marketing numbers, 150% for our daily wish list, 120% for Steam click-through rate. Visitors went up 145%. Not that much of a daily impression increase, only 11.6. But again, because all the other numbers are higher, it shows me that the key art really did convert people into wanting to check out the game and going to the page. Because if the impressions are about the same, but everything else is going, the only thing that's changed is the key art. That's what it is. And it isn't just your store key art where we saw a difference. So here we use the key art for the thumbnail on the left for a trailer, and on the left we use a generic thumbnail. At launch time, we were fortunate enough to have Nintendo put up 2 trailers for the game on their YouTube channel. And then you can see here that the trailer on the right that uses our key art, it had almost 500,000 views, and it has 3 times as many views as a trailer with the generic thumbnail on the left. And it also has about 3 times as many likes. So you can really tell that it's not just in the store. When you're using it for your thumbnail or even social media, you can also increase your numbers quite a bit. And that's the important thing, is getting those marketing numbers up so you can then convert people into wish lists and sales. Because ultimately, you're not going to have 100% conversion. Your conversion rates are going to be probably pretty low into actually getting into sales. But anything you can do to get those initial numbers up, then you have more people to then convert into sales. So here's another case study, and this time it's for Adventures of Chris. It's a game that we launched last year, and it really played a difference when we updated our key art here. I'm personally a big fan of it, and I think what the result is night and day compared to the original key art. So here's the before and after. On the top, you see top left is the original main key art. And then on top right is the original small capsule. We'll start with the original key art on the left here. So it had a kind of cartoonish 90s vibe. They didn't have an artist who could do something really high quality. And so they went and fed into what the game's aesthetic was. But here it has action. So you're seeing you're seeing some characters, but your eye doesn't really have a focal point. So you see the logo on the left, that's where my eye goes first. And I kind of miss everything else. The main character there in the middle, he's punching an enemy, but they kind of blend in together. And actually the enemy is a bit bigger, and that's not what you really want. And it just needs to be more modernized. And then with the small capsule on the right, again, it's just text on a map. Doesn't tell you anything about the game. At smaller size, it's pretty unreadable. And so when we went about modernizing it with the key art we produced down below, we really laid into the action elements of the game, bringing in different enemies. So the left, you see there are 4 enemies. You have some humor still in there with the balloons. You have some cookies there. And the middle focal point is the main character and the logo. So you see that right away, especially the main character is the focus here. All the enemies are looking at him. Everything feels with multiple dimensions. So you feel like the character on the bottom right, they're a bit forward. Everyone else is, different depths, and it plays really well. And then we took that middle image of him and then put that with the logo to create the small capsule on the bottom right. At a small size, it's really legible, readable. Again, a couple graphical elements and a logo, really clean, really nice. And that's what I like about what we did here. So this time, instead of comparing a standard week, I'm going to compare the 3 months prior to the change to the 3 months after the change. So here you can see that our wish list per day on the chart on the left, this is prior to the curate change, was really low, 2 a day. That's not anything to write about and say, hey, look at this awesome work we're doing. Instead, afterwards, you can see our numbers increased dramatically. Now, our click-through rate was lower, but I think that's because we had way more impressions because that key art was showing up in more areas thanks to its revision. People were seeing it a bit more. We maybe just in the upcoming titles section, and our visitor numbers doubled there. You can see, and then our wish list per day increased tenfold compared to before. And ultimately, that's what you want. You want those higher numbers, and you want those visitor numbers to increase too. Here almost 3 times the visitor number, daily visitor numbers than before. And I truly believe the key art played a big factor in that. And then our results, so 900% increase in daily wish lists, 141% in daily visitors, and 220% increase in impressions. So our impressions increased a ton, even though, and so I think that's what kind of decreased our click-through rate. But not just that, we were also converting more people going to the page through our trailers, our organic efforts on Reddit, on social media, Discord, because we had this better key art that would attract people's eyes. Because before, people just were not interested in that 90s aesthetic. We did some market research and it just wasn't fitting. So when we modernized it, we were getting more and more visitors to the page, which was awesome. And that's where I think we see those higher impression numbers. And because when someone goes directly to your page from Twitter, it doesn't get counted as a click through. We were seeing way many impressions. And I think that's why that's a little bit skewed. So I want to thank everyone for joining me during this talk today. I hope you learned a lot about great key art, and I hope that seeing our numbers where we doubled our numbers, tripled our numbers, even tenfold as with the last case study, that you got a lot out of this case. And, if you want to reach out to me, you can hit me up at contact@graffitigames.com. I'm also going to be doing a live Q&A session after this, so feel free to join that, and I can answer key art questions, try and help with finding an artist, anything, talk about the numbers we saw, and just other tips and tricks that you can do. Again, thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a great rest of your GDC.